Welcome back, viewers, to the gluten-free kitchen. It's getting on for late October. We're going over to some friends tonight and I'm going to be making a chicken and leek pie. I'm going to be making one gluten-free because Gillian's gluten-free and the others I'm going to be making normal. Making the pastry first. If you want to come over, Gillian. What I've got is 200 grams of gluten-free flour, half lard and half butter. That's 100 grams, 50 grams of each into 200 grams of flour. Easy way to remember this, half that to the quantity of flour you're using. And then it's just hands in, breaking the fat up and rubbing it into the flour. Then you're looking to try and get a breadcrumb mixture. Just takes a few minutes to try and get all that combined. Once it's getting there, you can feel it as you're running your hands through. Come and have a look, Gillian. So you can see the texture changing. You've got big lumps of butter. You're just running it through your fingers and your thumb. And you're just looking for that sand type of texture. And again, you don't want large pieces of fat in there because all that'll do is melt out when you put it into your hot oven. Feel that now, that feels okay. Now the next thing is the liquid to put in. The recipe on the back of the pack says about 4 dessert spoons, or 4 tablespoons, sorry. That's roughly about 10 or 12 of these. I've been making this quite a bit now and I've measured it out. Seems quite precise, but I use about 70 millilitres of water. What I'm not going to do is pour all that in though, just in case. Use a spoon, try and get it started off and just let that come together. And unfortunately it just means the hand in there might get a bit sticky, a bit dirty. And if you have a look, Gillian, you can see that granulated powder is all coming together. Couple of seconds and that's the pastry done. And now it just needs time to relax. And what we're doing is we're just going to put it back in the fridge just to allow the water, the fat, the flour just to rest a little bit, come together a bit more. So when you're rolling it out, it doesn't break apart, it doesn't flake apart. Now one hint, try and get the pastry into the shape you want when you're rolling it out. Don't just leave it a mound. Trust me, when you come to roll it out, this will pay dividends and make it easier for you to get the shape that you want. That just goes into the fridge, 10-15 minutes just to firm up. I'm just going to start the filling for my pie, chicken and leek. So over here I've got 1 large leek, 1 large onion, finely diced, finely shredded, and around about 700 grams, that's enough for about three or four people, of chicken. A little bit of oil to help the onions, get that pan nice and hot. Now some extra pieces I'll be putting in just to add some more flavour, some garlic. I just want a little bit of Italian seasoning, just something to help lift it. And to help with the liquid, I'm going to be using chicken stock. I see a lot of people using the chicken stock, but a lot of people in catering, they use chicken stock. They use a couple of ladles of it, and this thing I find is fantastic. Open it up, a couple of drops in, and that's your chicken dish, just lightly seasoned. Okay, and with the onion. Turn that down to a very low heat. I'm just going to leave those to sweat for about 5 minutes. Okay, so that's the onions nicely sweated down. They've had about 5 or 10 minutes. I've added my garlic. I usually put about 1, maybe 1.5 teaspoons of that garlic in, and a small handful of my mixed herbs. In next, very delicately, in go the leeks. And again, I'm going to give those 5 minutes to sweat down before I work on the chicken. So that's the leeks and the onions nicely sweated down. I can smell those flavours. The mixed herbs, the leeks, the onions. And I'm just taking it out of the pan. Back on the heat. A little bit more oil. And then in with the chicken. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is I don't want to make too much mess for myself to clean up later on. And I want all of the flavours in the same pan as well. I don't want to lose any of the chicken flavour. I don't want to lose any of these leeks and onion flavour. It's going back in there. Okay, so that's my leek and my onions. I wish you could smell this, especially with those Italian herbs. But this is what you're looking for. That white onion, translucent, and your leeks, they've gone from quite large, probably about thumbnail size, down to fingernail size. And again, those smells are gorgeous. So that's my chicken cooking through. As you can see in the pan, I don't know if you can see in this light, but again, it's slightly pink. A lot of people will be going, oh, pink chicken. But I don't want this chicken browned off all the way through. It's still got to marinate with these leeks and my stock as well. So that's about 3/4 cooked. That's fine for me. Back in with my leeks and my onion. Give that a mix. Get all those ingredients mixed together. Comfort food, double cream. This is the diet version. And again, I've had this boiling. And I'm just pouring enough water in just to almost cover that chicken. So if you want to look in now, let's just get a little bit more water in, just enough to cover. Now this all isn't going into the pie, otherwise it would just drown that pastry. This is going to be making my gravy, and that's what I'm going to use this bowl and this soup for. Once I've finished cooking this, I'm going to drain it, use the meat and the leek into the pie, and use the stock for the gravy. I've spent all this time making this lovely flavour. I don't want to waste it and just get gravy granules out of the cupboard and make some artificial tasting flavouring that's going to mask this chicken and leek. And again, my go-to chicken stock, I don't need much because it's very concentrated. We're looking probably enough for a tablespoon. Mix that through. And I'm just going to leave that just to slightly simmer, just off the boil. By that I mean there's no bubbles coming through, the heat's just going through the mixture. I'm letting the rest of that chicken cook through, boil through, but I don't want it to go hard, I don't want it to solid up. I'm just going to leave that there for a few minutes. Okay, so that's my chicken, leeks and stock. Been going for about 5 or 10 minutes now. All the chicken is definitely cooked through. The last thing to do, quick. And it's normally at this point I season. Salt and pepper, quick stir. Seasoning is a personal thing as well. I don't like mine with too much salt in it. That's perfect. People can do it at the table themselves. So as I said, I now need to drain off that liquor to make sure my pie doesn't go too soggy. And if you have a look at those, that's the chicken, the leek, that's going to be filling my pie. All that liquor's going to run through, a little bit of corn flour to thicken that up, and that's the gravy. While that's draining, I'm just going to get on, roll out the pastry, and then I'm just going to blind bake it. So I've got the oven on, just under 150. So that's my pie mixture just resting, cooling down. What I'm going to do is roll out, so I need a good amount of flour on the work surface. I've got my shaped dough, or shaped pastry, sorry, from the fridge. I need to remember I'm going to be making a lid for this as well, so I'm cutting off probably about a quarter, maybe just a bit more. Just leave that to rest on the side. Make sure I dust both sides down. Now, unlike normal pastry, this gluten-free stuff, if it sticks to your rolling pin, it makes a complete mess. So you want to make sure you're nicely dusted down and it's not going to stick. Now, with the pastry, what I find is it goes from the middle and it spreads up and then it starts to crack. So what you need to be doing is rolling and moving. Again, keeping an eye out for any damp patches that are coming up. Move your pastry, rub your hand over, and what you're doing is you're trying to feel for a smooth surface, no lumps or dips, and that's going to give you a nice even spread of your pastry. Now, as you find when you're rolling your pastry, it gets quite thin. Now, this isn't as forgiving as this pastry, which flexes and bends. That's because the gluten in the wheat and the flour binds together and is very flexible. This, as soon as you start bending it, it will try to break. But again, you can patch it together when you're in your bowl. One thing I saw on TV the other day was the French chefs. They were using a flat metal piece, sliding it underneath their pastry to help move it. And the reason for that is they didn't want the heat from their hands to just get onto the pastry. That's how precise their pastry was. The heat from their hands would melt the fat and make the pastry and ruin it. I found that technique quite good for helping with the gluten-free pastry when you can't move it. I make a lot of pizzas. I've got this pizza paddle, but if you've got a thin tray without the lip on it, anything you can slide under your pastry and help move it about, that will really help you. So if you're on Amazon, eBay, in the catering stores, try and look something out like that for yourself. So I'm still rolling out my pastry, feeling again for any imperfections, any lumps. Again, if it sticks a bit more flour. Now, if you do find that it cracks and it splits, again, as I say, this pastry is very, very versatile and you can just press it together. And what I'm doing is I'm wanting to leave a lip of the pastry over the top for when I blind bake that. So my oven's on, it's heated up nicely. So it helps keep the shape. Now, if you don't have beads or you don't have enough, the next best thing, just use a handful of rice. Again, we're not looking for much, we're just looking to keep the shape. Something to stop it falling in on itself as it's cooking. And the reason we want that is because we've got all that moisture in the pastry and we want that moisture to come out. So we're going to put it in probably 10 minutes, let it cook through, let that pastry crust up and make sure we don't have, as they say on the Great British Bake Off, a soggy bottom. So that's the chicken pie mix already done. That's my pie case is blind baked. Come over and have a look, Jill. Now, I haven't filled them up to the brim. Remember, this is quite a large pie. These are large pie dishes. I don't want to outface people. I've rolled the pastry lid, just placing it on top, grabbing a knife, and again tidying up those edges. Just going around, breaking off the pastry. And again, we're not doing haute cuisine, this is just a nice homemade pie. Squeezing the edges down. And the final thing, 3 slits on the top, just to help the steam escape. So there we have it. That's 3 normal chicken pies, 1 gluten-free chicken pie. Are you looking forward to that tonight, Jill?
Yes, I am.
Great stuff. Hope you can tune in next time. Underneath, I've got in the comments the recipe that I use to follow to make my pastry. Again, you're going to have to practice, find your own little twists and turns for how you make your own pastry. Hit that subscribe button, hit the alarms button, I'll be making more gluten-free things. Hope you tune in then.